the Core Cast. Welcome to Shoot the Core Cast, the official companion podcast to the RF Generation Shmup Club. This is the family-friendly, shmup-themed podcast that encourages you to shop smart. Shop Thulu. From RFGeneration.com, I'm MetalFRO, also known as Game Boy Guru, and my co-pilot on this mission, as always, is...
Addicted, also known as Addicted to Shmups.
And we have a guest with us this evening. The one and only Ed from Studio Mudprints, who you may know from the Bullet Heaven series on YouTube.
What's going on?
Welcome to the show. So before we get started here, just want to let all of you know, if you'd like to connect with us, there are several ways to do that. You can follow us on Twitter at ShootCoreCast. You can follow me directly at GameBoyGuru. Our podcast has a feed that connects with multiple sites and multiple podcast services. You can find the links to all of those at linktr.ee/shootthecorecast. Also, make sure you join rfgeneration.com and join us for a Shmup Club playthrough, and check out the large database of games there, good forums, and our Discord server that's linked from the front page. We have our own dedicated Shoot the Corecast topic there on the server, where you can come talk to us about shmups, about the latest episode, and the game that we're playing for the month, and share screenshots or photos of your high scores, etc. And you can also follow me on Twitch to get notifications of new streams, because I do stream the Shmup Club game every month. That is twitch.tv/GuruGameBoy. Yeah, the other thing I want to make sure and mention is that as we record this, we are just a few hours away from the start of Shmup Slam 4 that is being put on by the Electric Underground, and actually Ed and I are both going to be involved in that, as Ed's going to be one of the runners playing a game, and I'll be providing commentary for his run alongside Mark MSX, who runs the Electric Underground. And so there's going to be a lot of great content on there. By the time this episode is edited and out for all of you to listen to, the event itself will be done. But if you missed any of it, be sure to go and check it all out on YouTube, because there will be a lot of great replays that you'll be able to go and look at and view and, kind of see the action. So please make sure you check that out. So let's start with our question of the month, which I kind of changed it up a little bit this month. Instead of just throwing a question out there, I made it a poll. So I said, how big an impact should randomness play in the shooting game genre? And so I put out basically four possible answers. Minimal impact to the games, moderate impact, a big impact, or undecided/other. So in terms of just the raw poll results, the overwhelming majority said minimal impact. That was 52.6%. Coming in at in second place was moderate impact at 39.5%. 5.3% of you said big impact, which I thought was actually maybe a touch higher than I expected it to be. And then 2.6% said undecided/other. But of course, we did have responses, because I did encourage people to let us know, why they chose the option that they did, or if they had any specific examples or things to help illustrate their choice, to sort of let us know their thoughts. Right off the bat, Balturius on Twitter said, "You're missing the none/full determinism option. So I'm going to say that's my bad. I didn't even think about that as an option. But I think in part because I'm not aware of that many games where there's absolutely no randomness to them. So if there are plenty of shmups out there that have zero randomness and they're all totally predictable, let me know, because I am interested to find out what games those are. But in the interest of full disclosure, that's why I did not put an option like that on the list, because it didn't occur to me that there would be a large number of shooting games that had no randomness, or as Balturius puts it, full determinism. So, gotta throw that out there right off the bat.
Alright, our next comment comes to us from @Sylpheed0. My justification on moderate is only influence on start of sequence of drops and boss patterns. On top of that, it could also be modified on purpose. Otherwise, it has to be non-existent. No, I'm gonna drop an enemy from nowhere and no warning whatsoever and let it go. Yeah, random enemies that drop everywhere. Jeez, I was almost thinking that this scale might be on a scale of nothing to 1942.
Right. Well, I think 1942 is at least marginally predictable, right?
Yeah, it's predictable that you're going to get shot out of nowhere.
Okay. At Hauser, a.k.a. Hauser Cuteco, Cuteco levels of randomness is fine, he says.
Yes, and as soon as I saw that, I tweeted back and I said, how did I know this was coming? Because Hauser is like the high priest at the Church of Cute.
Yeah, he's well versed in the Book of Eschatos.
The Book of Eschatos, I like that.
I'm going to get you that as a fake Christmas present, the Book of Eschatos.
Oh man, I could make a whole eschatosology pun, but I'm sure half the audience would be groaning and the other half would be scratching their heads.
I'd say there has to be like a Book of Genesis somewhere, but someone else beat us to that punch.
Right. At Fireshark MD, aka Corkman, one of our participants, says, I chose minimal because I like the genre as it is mostly, but I definitely think there is room for more randomness in a small subgenre of shooting games. Variety is the spice of life.
Yeah, definitely. Our next comment comes to us from @Zoido. Randomness leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering. Suffering leads to Gradius 3 Arcade. I added the last part, but yeah.
There's your penance.
I agree with it.
Oh, well, somebody had to go full Yoda.
At Pony Tatsujin says, this is a question that immediately made me think of how Xevious handles its quote-unquote randomness. Which is to say, I don't think it does, actually. I think Xevious is pretty predictable throughout its whole thing.
Yeah, Pony Tatsujin goes on to say, honestly, randomness in moderation is fine. Like, say, player gets familiar with a specific pattern, game adds another pattern, or mixes everything up to throw the player off a bit. Psycho games are a bit notorious for that.
Yeah, Greg got PTSD.
Yeah.
Alright, our next one comes to us from @SPM_NSW. Depends on the mood. When playing for score or tough 1cc, too much random number generation can put you off. Some is okay if done well, but not too unfair. But it can also be good for casual plays where you prefer avoiding repetition and playing reactively to whatever the game throws at you. I think there's something to be said for taking things seriously and then also just taking it easy and not just enjoying yourself. You go for that 20 credit clear, but still enjoy yourself. That's pretty fulfilling as well.
Right.
At Fran Freaky says, I think randomness takes you out of from your comfort zone. but one of quote-unquote studied randomness. For example, some R-type bosses have certain routines. However, you cannot predict which one they will use next. That's the magic. On the one hand, Cambria Sword uses the gauge luck system, a bar impossible to stop which spams good or bad luck every few minutes, power-ups or enemies against you. It's a random but challenging system. It adds a unique, fresh, quote-unquote nervousness factor to the game.
Yeah, the R-Type example I had to think about for a minute, but then I realized the Stage 4 boss is like that, because it splits off into 3 parts, and they kind of move around. And I don't think it's totally predictable as to, once it splits, where it's going to go, unless there's a way to correlate it to your position on screen. But I've noticed that it does different things, or it moves in different directions and so forth as you fight it different times, especially for those of us who are still scrubs at the original R-Type and have to keep continuing from that last pre-boss checkpoint.
Quick side note, that boss is a jerk.
Indeed. So we got a really detailed response from at Daytona_Refkey, who, by the way, is a Japanese Gradius 3 player who has really dominated that game and is now currently working on one of the Twinbee games, if I'm not mistaken.
Daytona.
Yeah, Daytona Twinbee. Yeah. But I'm not sure if it's Daytona Twinbee that they're actually working on, or what. But anyway, so this was multiple tweets, but I think it's good to share. I think there is nothing wrong about randomness, quote unquote, itself inherently. It could be an issue when there is no room for players to make decision around the given situation, such as stage luck in some Psycho games, which players have no control over it whatsoever. Then let's talk about good, quote, randomness, unquote, shall we? This is a game that I mainly been playing, Daytona Twinbee. Okay, there you go. In this game, for second loop especially, this stage jellyfish enemy spawns different location every run, and Revenge Bullet can be varied. This may not make the run consistent and difficult to stabilize. However, the skills and tricks that you learn from the game, such as tail barrier to protect bullets, still remains, and you are going to build more experience, and eventually you will be able to make a good decision. And I think this is where true magic comes in. Once you build the experience, you will be very consistent, not just as build strong pattern, but also making optimized decision making based on what is currently going on. And this, my friend, is the reason why I play shmup. I thought that was a wonderful series of tweets, because it really kind of gets to the heart of sort of feeling the payoff from the shmup grind, as Mark likes to put it. You know, sometimes it can get a little bit discouraging if you're working on a particular game and you're just sort of hammering it away at a particular stage or boss or checkpoint or whatever it is, and you feel like you're not making any progress. But as you continue to play it and play it and play it, you know, you pick up on little things here and there. Sometimes it takes longer than you want, but at some point, things are going to click, and you'll be able to move on to that next thing. And it's a really good feeling when you get over that hump and, you know, are able to get on to the next thing. So I thought that was a really nice tweet thread.
All right, our next one comes from us at Maz67086804. I usually like STGs with randomness kept to a minimum. The trade-off is that game design has to be very solid. Low random number generator usually makes both the pros and cons of a shmup really noticeable. There are some heavy random number generator shmups that work well, just not my personal taste. And, you know, there are certainly some games that I prefer to, so it's not like luck of the draw. It really has to depend upon what the core concept of the game is. If the core concept of the game is to take your quarters and use a lot of RNG, it's not going to last long for me. But if it's something like, well, hey, maybe PSX here, where it's built in as part of the core gameplay, it can keep things interesting for a lot longer than you would normally sit and play through.
Yeah. What about the two of you? What do you guys think in terms of, what's your preferred level of randomness within the genre? Or do you not have a preferred level?
Well, I think for me, it depends on whether the game is built around how random it's supposed to be. So, like, if you've got, like, a Steriden or Project Starship X, I'm going to want things to be, fairly varied, but not in a way that it's, too sparse in one situation and overly crowded in another. Especially with the... something like Project Starship X, I appreciate that it's subtly different. You have the possibility of doing certain stages, but the stages themselves are largely the same with only minor variants in them. So I'll go with moderate for sure.
What about you, Addicted? What's your preference?
My preference is, just like choosing whether you want the red wine or the white wine to go with your chicken or fish. I prefer looking at it with the gameplay itself. I echo Ed's statements here. It really has to depend upon what the core gameplay is. If it was made such as PSX on there, where you can get a little bit of randomness and it's built into the core gameplay, then it certainly suits it. But if your game isn't entirely off the rails, all random, I hate to use this word, but I think that if you want to lead more towards fully random shmups, you're almost dealing with sort of like a mobile phone type of game design, where they get your loot boxes. You almost passed that boss. Let's get a loot box. Only $5.99.
Right.
Or stuff like that. I think it more randomness these days lends towards more monetization, which is not the way that I prefer to play games. But again, it has to be tied to the game concept. As far as on the scale of blank to blank, I would say low to medium.
Yeah, see, and for me, I kind of come at this from a perspective of, I don't think, as mentioned at the top of this segment here, that full determinism is best for the genre. Because I think a certain degree of, and maybe randomness is the wrong word for it, but like you said, Ed, variance. A certain degree of variance, or within a set range, if you will, of, parameters and things. I think that works the best, because then it's not the same rote experience every time, where the only variance is what you're doing on screen, and whether you're holding the fire button down and moving over here, or tapping the fire button and moving over there. So I think a certain degree of variance or randomness is going to be necessary to help keep a game fresh and kind of keep you coming back. That said, I think a minimal amount has been sort of my measuring stick, if you will, for the longest time. But I will say, playing this game through the course of the month has really opened my eyes to the possibilities of more random elements and more variance, I'll say again, as a way to make the experience its own thing. And I think this has been a good learning experience for me, which I think transitions nicely into actually talking about the game that we played here this last month. Let's go ahead and shout out our participants for the month. Of course, it was you and I, Addicted. We also had Mini Console Man, B.Reality, Cork, Gollum, ChrisTap76, Faux Macho, and then, Ed, you streamed the game at least once last month, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I thought so.
Yeah, we got to Final Cthulhu that one time.
Oh, that's right, yes. The game that we played during the month of July was Project Starship X. Addicted, do you want to go over a few details here about the development of the game?
Yeah, one of the things I'm not seeing the notes here I want to add is Project Starship, at least the original one, was more, when I played it, was more of a proof of concept for what will become Project Starship X. It's if anyone has any questions whether they want to try it versus Project Starship X, please play Project Starship X.
Right.
Any comments on that one, Ed? Are your thoughts the same?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
I was just saying, if someone wants to, we talked about the original Project Starship, and was more of a proof of concept than a game.
Yeah, that was Erebong's first game, actually, the first Project Starship. I don't think I would say that it's a good place to start. I think it's different enough and maybe unpolished enough that you can just kind of skip right over it, right into X.
I completely agree. So, Project Starship X was developed and published by Panda Indie Studios, also known as Erebon, on June 18th, 2020 on Steam, as well as on PlayStation 4, and a Nintendo Switch version followed. Now, I know that PlayAsia did a PlayStation 4 physical, and I really hope a Switch physical is forthcoming.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and that was through East Asia Soft.
Right. I forget. It seems like PlayAsia has at least 2 or 3 publishing arms these days. Erebon has made a handful of shooting games such as Red Death, Project Starship, as we talked about earlier, No Void, and the most recent Void Core. Other notable games would be Pity Pit, which looks like a Commodore 64 game, inspired by those simple but quality early arcade games like Dig Dug or Mr. Do. Project Starship X is a vertically scrolling shooter with a rogue-lite approach to its gameplay. Much like other shooting games such as Erebon has... excuse me there. Tongue-tied myself. Project Starship X is a vertically scrolling shooter with a rogue-lite approach to its gameplay. Much like other shooting games such as Erebon has designed, which is a key design element. I have to say, roguelite seems to be invading almost everything these days. I would start with stuff like the Binding of Isaac, and then we had, I'm forgetting that the PC one that was pretty popular, but then Spelunky is another huge one.
Right.
I think that it's unique enough that it can become a... dare I drop a Loki reference here, a variant timeline to its to STGs. I think there's enough there that it could fork off and become its own thing. I'm definitely hoping to see more of this. Panda Indie Studios' next game appears to be called Psycho Taxi Rewind, which looks like a Crazy Taxi in a Minecraft-like setting. Hey, I'm all for more Crazy Taxi type of games. I like that one that came out called Taxi Chaos.
Oh.
That was pretty good. Now, if we can only get people to make more Outrun clones.
Oh, there we go.
Or heck, even a Phantasy Star clone.
Huh. Okay. So, yeah. There's a lot to talk about here. I mean, like most shoot 'em ups, it's basic control. It's a 2-button system. You've got your 8-way digital control, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ed, but didn't you say in one of your streams that it also has analog control?
I'm pretty sure analog control is a thing. I'm actually going to verify that right now.
Oh, nice. Because I was thinking that you had either mentioned that on stream or possibly in your review, but I don't remember off the top of my head now. And honestly, because I played it with my arcade stick all month, I just never went back and verified that.
I used the 360 pad on PC, and then I used the Pro Controller on the Switch, and I used the analog sticks. Worked fine.
Oh, okay. So did you have variable movement?
I didn't, with my TV, I definitely did, because I need a better TV. But as far My TV's from 2007 and greatly needs to be updated. But as far as my computer monitor, it was not like one of those, quick digital movements. It did seem to be variable, but I would need to confirm that as well.
Okay.
I'm just bringing it up.
Sure. But while you're doing that, I guess I'll just mention, the 2-button control system, which is kind of a staple for old school shmups. You've got your fire button that fires your different weapons and things. You can press it repeatedly for a rapid fire and a sort of, touch the button and hold it for a second to sort of fire a couple volleys or whatever. But then you can also hold it down for a rapid shot, much like a cave game where it slows your movement down. It doesn't change your fire pattern necessarily, but it does slow the game down, and it sort of has this interesting darkening effect to the screen that sort of signals that you're in focus mode, if you will, and slows your movement down so that you can more granularly dodge through bullets and things. How much that would affect the variable speed thing, I don't know.
I like that it adds a crosshair when you do that as well, so you can sort of figure out where stuff is in the cardinal directions. It
Right.
makes things easier to dodge.
Yeah, that is a nice feature, that's true. And then, of course, the other button that you have is a multifunction button where tapping the button will make your ship do a dash, where it sort of dashes forward a certain ways on the screen. And that is one of the big hooks, one of the big mechanics in the game is this dash maneuver. You have to use it to dodge certain obstacles within the game, but it also has kind of a secondary effect where you get iframes after you dodge, where there's a second and a half or so there, where as your dash maneuver recharges to where you can do it again, you get a little period of invincibility there, where you can sort of your ship will almost sort of eat bullets during that time. So if you're dashing to avoid bullets that are coming at you, and there's bullets ahead of you, a lot of times what you can do is dash into those bullets, and it'll clear that little bit of space around you, and then you can kind of maneuver from there. So it really becomes a central mechanic. And then...
Yep, I would have to say that good on them for bringing the Dark Souls roll into an STG. One of the things that would be interesting to see in maybe the next game or some DLC is that the dashing forward is always at a constant or set speed no matter who you choose. Well, the shot patterns have changed. It would be interesting to see if we could get a variance upon that. Right, where one person they dash forward, but the recharge is slower, or they dash, it doesn't go as far, but then it recharges quicker.
Oh, sure.
That would make the game a little bit more interesting. I would love to see a little bit of variance or play upon it. Maybe the sequel.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea.
Just going to jump in here. Confirmed there is analog, like true analog control, but it's very touchy on the Switch.
Oh, okay.
I'm pretty sure it's a lot easier to sort of use on a more traditional gamepad. But like the Joy-Cons are pretty twiddly, right?
So, sure.
But it is definitely there, though.
Okay, good to know. The other functionality of your dash button is if you do a double tap of it, that will fire up a bomb. And your bomb stock can have, traditional bombs and other things as well that we'll kind of talk about as we go along here. It's interesting that Erebong chose to go with a 2-button system like that, to where the dash and the bomb were assigned to the same button. Not quite Mars Matrix with everything as one button, but it was interesting that Erebong chose to go that direction in the modern age where we have controllers with tons of buttons. It seems like an odd choice. It does work, though, and I don't know. I guess that might be a preferential thing for some.
You know, at least he didn't go full on Bell in Wonderworld.
Right. The big criticism that I would have, I guess, is sort of like twofold or two related issues. One is there is no rapid fire option unless you're holding the button down, and then that slows your movement. So in order to save my wrist and my fingers, of course on my joystick, I've got a turbo function. So I set the other fire button as turbo, so I could have constant fire holding the button down with normal speed movement, and then I could switch to the other one and get the slower movement when it made sense. The other thing is that there's no, at least in the PS4 version that I played, there's no option to change the control scheme or to like the button setup and everything. So I thought that was maybe a bit of a missed opportunity, because it would have been
I think
nice.
that's one of the things, one of the bigger complaints across the board with a lot of players is that you can't rebind the controls in any version.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I felt like that was a missed opportunity, because it seems like something that would be a nice accessibility feature to offer players, and the fact that it's not there was a little disappointing. The game's got 5 stages, and I'll say it has 5, or you play through 5 stages, let's put it that way. So you play through 5 stages, and the way the game is laid out is basically it has multiple loops, or multiple sets of stages. And so you play through the first 5 stages, and then you've essentially completed the tutorial loop, or the first loop. Once you do that, then you go back and the game essentially unlocks additional stages for you to play, additional elements that you'll encounter, and then as you go along into the second loop, then your experience will be different, because A, it'll be a little bit harder, B, there will be certain stages that you'll have access to that you wouldn't have seen before. So this becomes part of that randomness we talked about, where stage 1's always going to be stage 1. It's always going to be the same area that you're in, even though there will be variance between when certain elements within the stage appear, or, you know, some elements will appear in a run and some won't. But then stage 2, starting in the second loop, can be a whole different thing from the first loop. So you can either have the asteroid stage, which is what appears, I think, in the first loop, but then I think starting with the second loop, correct me if I'm wrong, that's where you get stage 2 could also be right up against the sun, where the sun's gravity tries to pull you in. So it adds a whole new element that you kind of have to just prepare for and learn as you play the game over and over again, to then sort of deal with, okay, am I going to have a, quote, normal stage 2 with the asteroids and stuff like that, or am I going to have the sun stage where I'm going to have to contend with the sun's gravity the whole time? So it really opens up, you know, the way that you approach the game and how you have to think about it differently than what you would consider a more traditional shooter.
Yeah, it seems to follow in some ways the Psycho model, where you go, well, the first 4 stages are always going to be similar, but they're always going to be randomized, and then you would, let's say, unlock more stages as you increase the difficulty level as you go through your loops. That's the closest analogy I can come up to for this type of SDG.
Right.
And the breadth of stages that will become available eventually, you're going to find that a lot of them will they can speak to the player more than others. Like for me, I know that every time the jump and shoot stage comes up, I'm like, yes, I can recover my life completely at this point. I can usually get at least one more shield out of it because I can get through it without getting hit. It's one of those stages that really clicks, but then you get stuff like Space Texas.
Oh, Space Texas.
It just wrecks your day.
Yeah.
I also don't like that this stage with the zombie Hitler's brain. That stage on there, I always seem to get the timing wrong with my jumps, but this asteroid field I always can get right. I don't know what it is. I think it's just me on that one.
You're talking about the one with the giant robot with tank treads?
Yeah, that always seems to throw me off. And especially how quickly those enemies on there will latch onto you and try and knock you down.
Yep.
That's a tough stage, that one.
Yeah. For sure. And that's one of the stage 4 options.
Yep, that's usually where my runs ended on stage 4. If I could get the other stage 4, it was pretty easy to do.
Right. Yeah. Now, the fourth loop is the final loop as far as I'm aware. Or at least the final loop that you have to complete before you get a credit roll. So that is, quote, beating the game, if you will. But the interesting thing about Loop 4 is you only get 4 stages in Loop 4. Then you get a sort of mini boss rush, if you will, where there are 2 bosses that you don't see elsewhere in the game. And then the final confrontation with Cthulhu. So it's kind of an interesting way to sort of change it up in that final loop.
Yeah, and if memory serves, Cthulhu was pretty much the boss of the first game as well, so that's a good carryover.
Right. Now, you only get 1 life per run, and depending on the character that you choose, your ship will be able to take a certain number of hits before it gets destroyed. And that will vary from character to character, and then you also have some control over that by collecting shield icons as you go along.
I was just going to say it'll also vary upon the roll of the dice for... what's her name?
Oh, for Sophie.
Sophie, yeah. Sophie's dilemma there. So you get a good roll or not.
Sophie's choice or Sophie's lack of choice?
So, yeah, it's definitely interesting on there. It provides a good balance. That's one of the things I thought the game did exceptionally well, is how balanced the characters were. They didn't feel like, hey, it's just the same ship within a different color. It really had to pick, like, hey, do I want the spread of I hate it. I should have more coffee, but the blank of Gwen Rossi to have the more spread out shot, or do I want the rapid fire from all these names I'm drawing a blank from Garrett Zapala, or do you want the straight up shotgun approach from John Johnson, or do you want the more powerful shot from Swag Thulu? It's definitely more of a varied choice than just another same ship in different paint job.
Right. I made a whole list of all these different items that you can collect, and I'm pretty sure I did not include them all, but I'll just rapid fire through these real quick. So you can grab a P icon to increase your weapon power. The R icon increases the rate of fire, so your ship, of course, fires faster. S icons will restore a shield hit, and there's a red mushroom that will do the same thing in certain areas. You've got an M icon that will make your ship fire missiles occasionally. A heart icon will add 1 shield hit to your total. The lightning bolt puts your ship into overload mode, which makes your shots larger and shoot faster, and basically makes you more powerful for a short period of time. There's also a syringe pickup, which is a shot of adrenaline, essentially. It's similar to the lightning bolt, but it lasts longer. You've got the sun that you can buy usually in a shop from time to time when you see it. And that it's like the heart, but it will add multiple hits to your shield.
Praise the sun.
Yeah, praise the sun, exactly. It's
actually called the Praisable Sun.
Oh, yeah. You got the flame, which kind of turns your main cannon into a flamethrower. There's the green blob, which turns your shots into a virus. That's kind of interesting because then when you're hitting enemies with it, then they're sort of flashing green. The pink poop emoji. Since this is a family-friendly podcast, I'll just call it fecal fire because I think it sounds just as funny. But basically what that does is instead of your cannon firing straight forward, it sort of goes in a circle around your ship. You don't want to pick that up unless you have met certain conditions, and I'll get into that here in a second. There's an anchor that you can sometimes pick up, which literally will throw anchors from the front of your ship. There's also a similar one that's like a fist, and that'll throw out these punching fists in what I kind of estimated was about a 25 to 30 degree angle out of the front of your ship. And so you
that's called the Plus Ultra. It's from Boku no Hero Academia.
Oh, okay. There you go. So
or My Hero Academia.
Right. So a little anime reference there.
I'm full of useless knowledge.
Right. We play video games. We're all full of useless knowledge. The double barrel shotgun basically doubles the amount of forward fire that you have. The laser, which is one of my favorites, turns your front fire into just a high-powered laser. Now, the crossbone gives you four-way fire. And this is the one that, if you pick up the crossbone, then it's not a bad idea to pick up that fecal fire, because then it essentially turns your ship into a four-way rotating cannon. And there are certain bosses that works really well for, because then you don't have to worry so much about whether you're actually hitting them to do damage, because you're going to be hitting them, and you can focus a little bit more on dodging through their bullet patterns. So that can be useful.
If you have the crossbone, it's okay to go full fecal.
Full fecal. I like it. The red turret gives you missile shots, and like a spinning turret that spins around your ship. There's a blue turret that gives you more of the standard forward firing shots, and then there's a brighter, lighter blue turret that gives you a laser that spins around your ship. It always fires forward, but the turret itself spins around your ship.
Just want to I want to sort of elaborate on the standard shots. I think those are gray. At least I perceive them as gray.
Oh, okay. That could be, yeah. I thought it was like sort of a darker blue, or maybe like a gray blue. Yeah, that makes sense. Now there are sections of the game where you'll be in the crawler instead of your ship, so you'll be on the ground, and you can jump, which is the same button that you use as the dash in the normal flying sections. And so in those sections, there's like this little triangle sign that you can pick up that will give your crawler a three-way flamethrower instead of just the single forward-firing flamethrower. There's a bottle of liquid that you can sometimes buy in the shop, which will restore all your shield hits. And then the last one on the list here is the Scepter of Cthulhu. I honestly have not figured out what that does. I bought it a couple of times, hoping that I would see something, but I never actually saw anything.
I think it actually has to do with shot power.
Okay.
It has to do with shot power, and there's a trade-off, and I'm not 100% sure what the trade-off is.
Okay.
So you're getting more powerful shots, but I think there's a what is it? I think it actually reduces your rate of fire a little bit.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
That would make sense. That's just like the minigun, or there's something equivalent to minigun where it gives you 2 rapid fire, but then it decreases your power by 1. So if
Gatling. Yeah.
Gatling, yep.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Yes, the Gatling, that was another one. Are there any other major power-ups that I'm forgetting?
Trying to think.
Because as far as I know, that was all I encountered during my playthroughs.
Oh, the Holy Grail.
Oh, yes! Holy cow, how did I forget the Holy Grail? I thought I had that in here somewhere.
Holy Grail is mad OP. You basically fire this cone of wine, which, could ostensibly just be like a huge cone of blood, but it's super heavily damaging, and I think paired with Fecal Fire, that actually does quite a number as well.
Yeah, Holy Grail is awesome. Holy Grail with Crossbone is insanely good.
Oh yeah, you've almost got 360 degrees of coverage with that.
Yeah, and there are other power-ups that you can combine together. Like the laser that I mentioned before, you can combine that with the double-barrel shotgun and essentially have a double laser coming out of the front of your ship.
Oh yeah.
Much like the double laser.
There was actually one of the times that I took on one of the more difficult fights. I'm sure we'll talk about that a little later on. I did have double laser and also 3 laser turrets, and it just chewed right through them. It was kind of unfair. Yeah.
Yeah, I had that one time too where I had double laser and 2 laser turrets and a missile turret. That's one thing to note, is that you can only have 3 turrets equipped, so any turrets that you find or buy after that point are completely useless and they won't do anything.
Yeah, they won't even. They also won't replace anything on the. They won't replace any of the existing turrets.
Right. Oh, that's right. The invincibility star. I forgot about that.
Pretty useless.
Oh yeah, it is largely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Except for. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say there are a lot of Mario references, more than you might expect in this game.
Right.
There's a lot of references in general. I think we'll get into that later on, right?
Yeah. So who wants to talk about the playable characters?
All right. Well, your basic characters, when you start off on the outset, you've got... you know what? I was about to say Marco Rossi. That's totally Metal Slug. Garrett Zappola. He has... he's a reluctant hero. His health is failing him, and he's going into the fray one more time. He's obviously seen some stuff. You can tell by his portrait, and he's your basic all around character. He's going to have a decent rate of movement. He's going to have a decent fire rate. He's going to have a decent fire power, and a moderate amount of shield. His counterpart on the outset is it's Gwen Rossi, right?
Yeah,
I think. Yeah, trying to reach for those names. Now she's going to move faster. She has 1 fewer shield, but she's got a wider shot. So that's the trade-off that Gwen has when compared to Garrett. As players make progress and play more of the game, more and more characters are going to be unlocked. There's 2 more that get unlocked through gameplay. The first is John Johnson, or JoJo for short. He has skipped all of the leg days.
Yes.
He's got electrified extremities, and he is super powerful, but he's got a very slow rate of fire. However, if you can boost that rate of fire, or if you can get the proper items in a given run, he is a very good character to use for the end game stages, because he's able to dish the pain while maintaining a decent amount of shield power. And then finally, there's Sophie Jefferson, who is basically she's basically a D20. When you start the game, all of her attributes are randomly applied. So she'll have a random amount of health, a random rate of fire, a random what am I trying to say? A random rate of movement, and a random fire power. And using these attributes, you'll have to make do with what you've got. Sometimes it can be excellent. Other times, not so much. There is also a 5th unlockable character, which I don't know if we are going to cover that now or later. Should we now or later?
I mean, we might as well cover it now. I've got it in the notes here.
Okay, so the next character, the final character, is Swag Thulu, who has moderate. He's got moderate ship speed, a wide shot, super powerful, but he only has one shield.
Yes.
So his OP nature is basically countered by his inability to take much punishment at all. Of course, given a decent amount of shields, if you collect enough of them, it should be pretty easy to get at least 2 or 3 extras throughout the game. That's one thing actually that should be mentioned as well. Shield pickups, as long as you're at full life, will build up a bar underneath your shield count, and after 5 you get another shield.
Yeah, which is a really helpful system given the amount of variation from run to run, where
exactly, yeah,
you're not entirely sure what you're going to encounter or what specifics are going to be thrown at you. So it's good to be able to build up some extra shield hits to help you counter some of that.
And unlocking him seems to be a little bit variable as well. I didn't understand. On the PC version, I beat the Shop Thulu and locked him that way. But on the Switch version I was playing, and I lost, but I was playing as Garrett, and it still unlocks Swag Thulu. So I'm not sure how that happened.
Huh. That's interesting. I wonder if that's a bug in the Switch version. Because I know on PS4, I had to beat Shop Thulu in order to unlock Swag Thulu.
I wonder if maybe that was added a little later down the line because Shop Thulu is such a challenging character.
That could be.
Could be.
Maybe that's been patched in.
Yeah, I verified that it was the latest version. I thought that maybe I missed something, but that could be. I mean, it's just too hard for most people, and it is definitely difficult to do. I know that, Guru, you had to use, was it JoJo in order to get him powered up enough to do it?
Yeah, I want to say I beat him with JoJo when I took him on, and I made the mistake of waiting to take him on until the second loop. It certainly would have been easier to unlock Swag Thulu in the first loop, but I kind of just went for it and got through that first loop pretty quickly. So that was one of the things that I failed to do. And of course, we're mentioning Shop Thulu here. One thing we haven't mentioned is that after Stage 2 and Stage 4, you encounter Shop Thulu. And so, in similar fashion to like the shops in Kid Icarus, for example, where you walk into the room and there's 3 items and you jump to the one that you want to get, here you encounter Shop Thulu and you got the 3 items, and assuming you've collected enough coins, which you get throughout the course of the level as you take out enemies and things like that, you just dash into the item that you want to buy, and then that will then buy that item for you. And if you've got enough money, sometimes you can buy more than one in any given visit to the shop. But it only appears twice per run, always at the end of Stage 2 and Stage 4.
I would have to say that gives me another idea for something to add to the game. Credit card. Instead, if you don't have enough coins, it subtracts from your score.
Oh, like in Kid Icarus.
Yeah, where it takes away hearts from you. That would be definitely interesting to see that implemented.
Yeah.
As a rare item drop, that'd be great.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Exchange score for whatever, yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
Also, it's worth mentioning as well, if you are able to defeat Shop Thulu, you can just steal all this stuff.
Oh, right.
It reminds me of the Skyrim method where people were putting buckets over the shopkeeper's head and just stealing everything.
That's awesome.
I should also mention that Swag Thulu is very interested in dance, and he has, if you're doing well on the retro throwback or the 80s bowling stage, he starts dancing in the background of the stage. I thought that was a really nice touch.
Oh yeah, the Saturday Night Fever style. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, and the funny thing about Swag Thulu 2 is the character select music changes with him. You know, it's the same for the other 4 characters, but then when it comes to him, he comes strolling on the screen with a big boombox on his head, and you get this this music.
It's
with this pulsating
super
beat.
obnoxious. It's great.
Oh yeah, it's hilarious and it's awesome. And then when you select him, he dabs, which is just stupid, but again, awesome. Because it's
Swag Thulu was very much a product of his time.
Oh yeah.
All right, so we'll move on to the secret bosses. There are a couple here. We've got the green mushroom, which you defeated to get extra life. The red mushroom, you defeated to earn 2 additional shield hits. Red mushrooms, which I have to say, I kept getting the red mushroom after I got the green mushroom once, and that was pretty disappointing. The green mushroom was so much more useful. And I think that's what you used to finish off Shop Thulu, right?
Yeah, I want to say the run that I defeated Shop Thulu, I probably had the extra life.
It certainly makes it easier. We have a sort of triangle shape, sort of like Eye of Providence type creature that is called Premonition. It's a large red triangle that fires waves of bullets. And there is I think I'm thinking of the right one, but there's a variance of this as well that is gold. And goes faster. There's a couple of these that have variants here, and I believe that one gives you a P or power icon.
Mm.
And then there's a toilet monster, which you can see it will be sort of sitting out there in the bottom right hand of the corner, usually where all the M2 bars go.
Right.
Yeah, if you defeat him and get him off of the toilet, you get a random power-up.
In my place, he usually left behind Virus.
Oh, okay.
That would make sense, yep. I only got him a couple times, so I didn't have a constant stream or a good stead or idea of his drops. All right.
Right. Yeah, I think I only encountered him twice as well, and I beat him at least once. And I think you might be right. It might have been Virus that he dropped.
Because, all that fecal coliform bacteria.
Makes sense.
And last, we have the Doom Letters. You defeat for random power-up and defeat them all to spell. Well, we won't spoil it here. But the Doom Letters are the one, I know in your run-throughs that they were unlocked, but in the ones that Guru played through, at least the ones I saw and the ones I played through, they'll show up as sort of like shooting stars, bright shooting stars, where they'll be yellow, and if you haven't unlocked it, they'll just drop a power-up.
Oh, right. Yeah, and there are times where you get those shooting stars where they'll just randomly drop a power-up. But I don't think you unlock the Doom Letters until you beat the final loop, right?
That's a good question, actually. I think there's Doom Letters in just the 4th loop. I think that's where they sort of start appearing.
Oh, I never got any Doom Letters during any of my 4th loop playthroughs. So it was only after that then I saw the message that Doom Letters unlocked or whatever.
Maybe I'm not sure, but I seem to think that I've got Doom Letters in a game file that I haven't completed the game. I might be wrong, but
okay.
Because I don't think I've beaten the PS4 version. I beat it on PC.
Oh, gotcha.
I'm not 100%. Anyways, collecting the Doom Letters is hilarious. You owe it to yourself to try to do it.
Okay. Well, I might have to go back and do that then. Are there any other hidden bosses? Because those are the only ones I encountered.
Defeating all of the Doom Letters will get you to like a supreme final boss. It is the hardest boss in the game.
Oh wow!
And and it'll have you in stitches, but like you've got to contend with its fire, and it's just it's a bit much.
Okay.
So it should also be mentioned with regards to the Doom Letters, in order to spell what's required of the Doom Letters, you are going to have to extend your gameplay past stage 5.
Oh, okay. I wondered about that because when you go through the game and you get to the end of stage 5, there's the little thing that comes on screen and you dash into it to activate the final boss fight in the various loops.
Yes.
So you essentially have to loop the game without doing that, which makes it more like a traditional sort of cave 2-loop thing where you get to the next loop of the game or whatever, and it's harder, and there's more bullets, and there's more going on. So, okay, I wondered about that.
So, so you know that the boss area is like this black mass that you dash into it, but eventually it just goes away.
Right.
And the stage resolves. That will happen in every stage, every subsequent stage. So if you just let the boss go, you can keep going and going and going, and it'll just get harder and harder and harder as you do. But yeah, that's how you're able to spell out the Doom letters.
Interesting. Okay. So, yeah, obviously there's more game yet to uncover. but it's basically, if you can complete the 4 loops of the game, you get a credit roll, and you have beat, quote-unquote, the game in kind of the basic sense. But yeah, obviously there's more to do than... One thing that I noticed after I completed that 4th loop and got the all stages clear message in the credits roll, there's supposed to be other modes that you can unlock, or that will unlock, but I didn't see any other modes on the title screen, so I wasn't sure if that just opens up new stuff that you can unlock within the game as you're playing, or how that works.
I'm looking into it now. Oh, I know what it is. I know exactly what it is. So when you beat it, there's going to be additional things that'll appear as you start your game. There's going to be like hardcore, there's like ultimate hardcore, and then there's random. So like you can really randomize your game if you choose you have to crash into them, right? You can really, really randomize your game by choosing the die. It'll take any stage and mix it up with elements from completely different stages, and it is the hardest thing that you'll play. Yeah. And of course, there's like hardcore mode where you've only got like you still have the same shields, but you can have a heart attack. Oh. If you graze up against bullets, it creates tension, and eventually you'll end up going into cardiac arrest until you can be defibbed, and then you'll come back and you'll be able to continue playing. But like, I never got used to that mode. My review happened, and I quipped that it was serious like a heart attack, and I had a literal heart attack like the next day.
Oh, that's right.
So, yeah, that happened.
Good grief.
But yeah, that's something that can happen in hardcore. And then there's like an even harder core version of that's more difficult to get through. But yeah, those are unlocked when you complete the game.
Okay.
For even more to do. Yeah.
See, I wondered about that because when I got to the 4th loop, when you first start out in stage 1, you get this red skull that's sort of coming down, spinning from the top of the screen. And if you dash into it, that takes you to hardcore.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas if you just skip it, then you're just in the 4th loop, proper or whatever.
Regular old game, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, a second skull comes down with it, which is, even more menacing looking. Which is, it creates an even harder situation for the player. And then the die, there's a die as well that you can choose, and that will, like I said, it just completely randomizes the entire game. So if you're looking for something that's full random, that's your mode.
Okay. So roll the die if you want to die, essentially.
Yeah, more or less, yeah.
Welcome to random. That just doesn't have the same ring to it.
Roll that 20-sided death.
Wow.
It's usually a 1.
Oh, okay. Is that good or bad?
Critical fail, man.
Oh, well, okay. So there's a lot going on in this game. I mean, there's a lot of, as we said, there's a lot of variance to, the different stages. Stage 1, you're always sort of in the, you're in space. You start off and you see space junk basically floating beneath you, and usually there's a space shuttle and other things that you can kind of see off in the distance. And there's always a few elements that are generally present in Stage 1, but they'll be in different orders. And then there are other elements that may or may not appear in a particular configuration of Stage 1 that you get when you start a run. And so it's interesting how there are times when I played that I got hit with all the stuff in Stage 1 that I struggle with in one run. So I didn't even get out of Stage 1 because I would get into that situation where I would make a mistake and lose a shield hit, and then that would sort of snowball into me making other mistakes because I got flustered, and then my run would end. But then I'd have another run where I would get through and do really well in Stage 1, and even a couple of times when I would get essentially a perfect run of Stage 1, which I guess segues into another element that we should mention. There's another quote item I guess you can get in the game, which is the tank module, and it's this giant ship thing that you can basically dock with, and it does several things. Number one, it slows down your movement, but it makes you more powerful because it essentially amplifies your ship's firepower, and it has some of its own that it sort of adds on top of that.
Yeah, I call it Metal Slug mode. Basically,
yeah. It also has the ability to kind of collect items for you. So there are certain items that when you see them, you have to dash to collect them, like the power icons, the shield icons, etc. I think most items are actually like that, where you have to dash to collect them. So when you hit the dash button while you have the tank module, it basically ejects the tank module out in front of you. And so if there's an item there, instead of you having to dash into it, you just throw the tank module at it and it'll collect it on your behalf. And then you dash again to get back into the tank module. But if you manage to go through a particular level and you don't take any hits and you get rated perfect, and then at the end of the stage, you'll be rewarded with getting the tank module at the beginning of the next stage.
And that works really well on the sun stage. Let me tell you, you just eject once and go straight into the sun.
Right. Yeah, because the sun's gravity will pull it in. But you get rated at the end of each stage in terms of your performance. So if you take no shield hits during the course of the stage, it's perfect. If you take one hit, your performance is rated great. If you take 2 or 3 hits, it's meh. And then if it's 4 or more shield hits, it's get good. So a little bit of a light scolding there from Arabong for not playing well. And I'll just say I heard a lot of get good during the course of the month. I know, Ed, you have got some stuff that you know about the game that may not be as public knowledge or may not be stuff that we've already mentioned here, just through organic play. Is there any fun tidbits that you can share with us?
The sun is there was a point of contention when I was first, playing the game for review. And it revolved around mad events. Which did we talk about mad events yet?
We haven't, and we definitely need to touch on that.
Yeah. So a mad event is basically a randomly selected challenge that will just kind of happen every now and again. Sometimes they won't happen as often. Other times you'll get mad event after mad event. However, there are certain mad events that don't work especially well in some stages. One of them is reverse control.
Oh.
So basically what happens is that your screen will go into a negative, right? So basically the colors will get swapped around. And your controls will be reversed. So when you press down, you'll move up. If you press left, you'll move right. What that ends up doing on the sun is it makes you sort of go all over the place, and the gravity just completely messes with your sense of where to move when the negatives are, or when the negative movement is in play. Basically, outside of doing like a pure random run, if you're playing the sun, you'll never get negative or reverse movement because
See, now, I wonder if maybe that hasn't been patched yet in the PS4 version, because I did a couple of times get the reverse control on the PS4 or on the sun stage on the PS4 version.
That's weird. Yeah, I know. It may have been missed. I'm not 100% on that. But the at least in the PC version for sure, I haven't had reverse control on the sun since it was patched out.
Interesting. But yeah, mad events come in multiple forms. The secret bosses we talked about, a couple of those you can get through a mad event where you'll see an indicator that will show that something's coming. So you'll get this, looks like a play on the whole Mario green warp pipe kind of thing that'll jut out from one angle of the screen. And if you enter that, then you'll get into the secret boss fight, like the green mushroom or the red mushroom. Or the toilet monster. Some mad events will be obstacles that you need to dash and dodge or what have you. So there will be a mad event where there will be this big column of fire that will be shooting out diagonally across the screen, and you'll have to dash across it and then quickly dash across the second one. Or what's another one? There will be a brief meteor shower that you'll have to contend with. Or there's a weird one where there will be these two goofy blue, like deformed My Little Pony unicorn things that show up on screen and do these rotating columns of bullets that it'll fire at you. And you have to try and destroy those things and, dodge their fire patterns and stuff.
Small detail on that, by the way. They're both barfing and pooping rainbow bullets.
Right. Yes.
I thought that would be a good way to add in a quick callback to Nodcat.
Oh, the Neon Cat?
Neon Cat, yeah, sorry, Neon Cat.
Oh, yeah.
All sorts of ideas for the sequel. Let's get on it. No. Right. One of the things that I did like about the mad events, and I'm not sure if this was previously covered, but I didn't hear it, was that when the controls are reversed, the ship turns blue.
Yeah.
So it makes it a little bit easier to see. That's one thing. So mad events here. What's everyone's favorite mad event in the game?
Honestly, I like the ones where they give you a free power-up.
Yes, I was literally going to say that. Free item mad event. Nothing better.
But otherwise, I think if you're just going for... I like when they sort of randomly give you the ability to fight a secret boss, because that's when you can fight the green mushroom and get that extra life, or the red mushroom, even though it can occasionally be a jerk and I sometimes struggle with dodging through its waves of bullets, and end up taking shield hits that I then just recover when I get done, so it kind of feels like a wash.
Of course, with that, by that same token, you sometimes have to fight the lazily drawn star.
Yes, that's true. That's the other secret boss.
And its items are arguably less good.
Right. And there's mad events where you get these sort of walls of plasma or whatever that kind of close in on you and on your position, and you're supposed to sort of figure out where the narrow space is that you're going to be able to fit to. Sometimes it closes in on both sides. Other times it's at an angle, or sometimes it'll close down into a small square, and so you kind of have to maneuver where that's going to close in on.
And then it's the wall of fire that usually I see a lot on the Sun stage, where you just have to dash in between it. And you get the stuff too with the lines of those invincibility blocks that you have to navigate through.
Right. The other thing about the dash that we haven't mentioned so far is there are times when you'll be presented with something on the screen that'll sort of flash, and if you get within proximity of it, like with a shield or another power-up that you dash into to collect, because normally you dash forward, there are these deals that will give you the ability to dash to its position. So there will be times when there will be a row of bullets or a laser that you can't just fly through. And so you'll have one or more of these little target points that you can dash to. And so sometimes what you have to do is hit the dash button in quick succession to dash from point to point to point to sort of get through an obstacle. Whereas normally there's a cooldown period when you dash before you'll be able to do it again. But with those, because it's specifically targeted, it sort of changes up that mechanic a little bit so that you kind of have to do it a little bit differently then. And so that's one of the things that sometimes throws me is whether or not I can time those properly so that I can dash to get through, all of those target points, so I can pass by that obstacle and not take any hits.
I'm going to coin a term here. We'll call it dash chaining.
There you go.
And so that will be part of our additions to the new game here. Well, it's a new play term, dash chaining. One of the things one of the things I did find out about these is it's not directional. So if you wait for enough of the screen to fill on, you just smash on that button. You like and subscribe, hit that button, and it won't matter where you're at. It will just follow you through.
Right.
Now, there's also a caveat to the whole thing, too, because there are some stages that have hazards that are baked into the stage design, where you can pass through stuff like lasers and like rocks and stuff like that. There are certain things that are like really pointy. And if you use a dash to go into a targetable point, to auto-dash into that point, you'll hit these obstacles and you'll sustain damage in certain situations. There's that. The fourth stage in the first loop, for example, is a great example of this, where you've got kind of the labyrinth of these sharp, pointy walls, and you got to be careful not to dash until you're at the right spot, otherwise you're going to end up taking a ton of damage.
Yep, that's right. Yeah, there are a bunch of different mad events. There's the one that I hate is the one where it's low gravity, where you get pulled down toward the bottom of the screen, and your best bet is to dash and then hold up on the joystick or D-pad or whatever to slow your rate of descent, if you will, toward the bottom of the screen, so that you can avoid, the hazard that's at the bottom.
Oh yeah, there's another stage that happens frequently, and I think it's in the Geometries of Horror loop.
Yep.
Where you've got all the pyramids in the background, and it's that's a challenging stage, but it's not something that can't be overcome. I think there are harder stages in that one, but it's a great place to sort of perfect how to overcome and even use gravity to your advantage.
Yeah, that stage definitely gave me trouble when I was going through the game. But yeah, I mean, I want to touch on some of the references because there's a ton that we kind of mentioned at the top of the episode. There, like you said, Addicted, there's a bunch of Mario references. When
Please don't sue me.
Yeah, the ghost boss in the bowling space bowling stage.
It's one of those ghosts.
Yeah, it basically looks like one of the ghosts or monsters out of Pac-Man. Just kind of slightly varied. It's like a green ghost, and that boss can be a bit of a jerk.
Eye. Yeah, he can be tricky at times.
And that whole space bowling thing is another deal where bowling balls in the stage become target points, and you can dash at them to then knock down pins or take out certain enemies. And we haven't even really touched on the enemies in the game so much, and I don't know that it's that important because a lot of the enemies in the game are, I'm not going to say inconsequential, but they're certainly not as important as individual constructs as I think they are in other shmups, because they just kind of become part of the set dressing for all of the zaniness that's going on.
I would say more so than the enemies themselves, their patterns are more significant.
Yeah, because one of the interesting things that the game does is it sort of telegraphs its movements and its overtures in a way by sort of giving you an indication of where a hazard is going to come in on screen, by giving you an indicator at the side or top or whatever of the screen to kind of tell you where something's going to be happening, and then it's up to you to then react to that once you kind of see what's happening or coming on screen. So whether that's a wave of floating eyeballs that you need to shoot down, or a hazard of rock formations and things that you need to dodge through, or lasers that you need to dash past, or something like that. There's all kinds of these different elements that the game will throw at you, and it, like I said, it kind of telegraphs these things, but they always come in different orders, and so it's an interesting way to kind of approach the design, because you think about some games where they've got sophisticated graphics, and you can kind of see what enemies might be coming, because in a top-down shooter, for example, you might see the shadow of a helicopter coming into your field of vision before you actually see the sprite of the helicopter, for example. Things like that. This is kind of a twist on that, I feel like. A way for the game to sort of give you a half a second to sort of mentally prepare for whatever it is it's going to throw at you.
Yeah, I can't quite call... I mean, this is copyright, so I can't use this term, but it does feel like the game gives you Spidey sense.
Right. But there are other references too. You mentioned earlier, Addicted, all the Mario references. And one of the stage 3 iterations has you going through and giving you the ability to shoot down what are basically green Goombas.
Yeah.
And
there's like piranha plants as well. They're kind of a pain.
Yeah, the piranha plants are a pain. They jump, and you have to either jump over them or run underneath of them with a crawler.
Yeah.
Those shells. If you hit the shell and you get enough of them, you get a automatic shield.
Right. Similar to in the later Super Mario games, or the Super Mario games where you kick a turtle shell, and if you hit enough enemies in a row, then you'll get a 1-up.
And it's not just the visuals, the sound too. I believe we'll get to this in a little bit, but the Sun stage sounds awfully familiar to a certain Konami series.
Right. Or like the boss of that stage, that crawler level, you get to the end and it's basically a giant Koopa Troopa that is a total Bowser reference, and you have to shoot him with your flamethrower enough that he sort of slumps over, and then you can sneak behind him and jump on this big green deal that's essentially like a P block in the, Super Mario 3 and Super Mario World and the later games, that then, like in the first Super Mario, where you get to the end and you touch the thing and it pulls the floor out from underneath Bowser. It's basically that. So it's sort of a fun little send-up to those games.
Not to mention the Fire Flower power-up as well, where you get, just from the one shot to the 3 branching shots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I was going to say that the stage itself seems like something that could have been inside a Super Mario 3 for the Game Boy had they not gotten the Wario sense. The Gunpei Yokoi developed Mario Game Boy games are so different, especially the first one, which had STG stages in it.
Yeah.
It almost feels like it's I hate to use the term spiritual sequel, but it could have belonged in a Game Boy game.
Right. I'm trying to think of some of the other references.
Zombie Hitler, which is pulled from Bionic Commando.
Oh, yes. Yeah, zombie bad guy in the PS4 version for some stupid reason.
That's Sony's censorship. And you know what? I reached out to Arabang on this, and because he's the kind of guy that, he'd do something like that to poke fun directly at Sony.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought for sure that was an intentional joke, but no, it was real censorship from Sony.
Wow.
Unfortunately, but he did say though that he wanted to call it censored bad guy.
Oh, that would have been amazing.
Which I think, that would have been a pretty chef's kiss moment. There was something else though. So Zombie Hitler and his giant eyeball. One of our viewers actually made a suggestion of Zombie Eyeball and his tiny Hitler.
Nice.
And I brought that to him too. And allegedly, if he gets a chance to expand on this game, or if he does something with it, he thought of the whole thing. Like the eyeball would hold this little effigy of a tiny Hitler and shake him violently, and the blood would be his shots, right?
Oh, that's hilarious.
You'll probably also notice that there's a unique explosion to Zombie Hitler as well, where it's got that sort of splatter on the screen.
Mm-hmm.
And that was actually supposed to be implemented into all of the bosses. They were all supposed to have something unique in their explosion, but he basically either lost interest or something came along that prevented him from implementing as much as he wanted in. So he made sure to keep it as a particularly violent end to Hitler.
Yeah, appropriate.
And then there's that other stage 1 boss that looks like it came straight out of Doom, but is really easy. The one that looks like a meatball.
Oh yes, the biomechanical.
It's like the big long acronym name there,
right? Well, and you wonder if the way it spells bio is BYO, so if that's like a thinly veiled Bido reference, maybe.
Could be. It could very well be. I do know that there's a lot of references to Gravity Falls in this game as well, which is confirmed. The pyramid boss there that you take on in the third loop, Geometries of Horror, that is a direct reference to Bill Cipher.
Huh.
In Gravity Falls, yeah.
Okay.
So what you're saying is, to understand this game, you must watch Gravity Falls. I got some watching.
Well, some of it, anyways. I think there's enough pop culture reference to a very wide array of things that not only video gamers are going to enjoy the references that are here. Even a casual player from outside of the shmup sphere and even outside video games can see these references and say, "Hey, I know that."
Mm.
We'll put a tagline: "Fun for all the family. Kill Zombie Hitler with your kids."
It's a learning experience.
One of the things that I liked was when you confront Cthulhu at the end of the game, that he basically thinks that it's a dance competition, and it's then, sort of a bit of a fourth wall break where he realizes, he starts throwing out shield power-ups, and so you can dash into those and pick them up, and he's like, what, you only got the one move? And then at some point, then you're given the opportunity to shoot at him, and he's like, whoa, dude, not cool, bro, kind of a thing. And,
yes.
And then he's like, oh, this is one of those games, So it's just kind of funny how it's self-referential and doesn't take itself seriously at all.
Yeah. It's like, Swag Thulu told me this was a dance competition.
Yeah.
The other one that we should mention that I can't believe I just didn't think of till now is Aliens.
Oh yeah.
Yes, the
big trimorph,
the big trimorph, yeah, which is basically like a dollar store version of a xenomorph.
A dabbing dollar store version.
Yes, a dabbing.
It's
because
true,
when you
yeah.
kill it, it dabs. Yeah.
Oh, but don't forget it's modified by the bad guys.
Yes.
Next boss, I want to see Floss.
Oh God, yes.
Which one?
He wants to see a boss floss, like do the floss.
Oh, good grief.
DLC.
That'd be hard to animate, like.
It could just be, or heck yeah, find some way to do a knockoff Carlton.
Now that would be amazing if you could get a boss to do the Carlton.
It'd be tough, though. I mean, there's allegedly some rights being contested with that on Fortnite.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, maybe they could do a modified Carlton.
They could.
Call it the Carlston.
Yeah. Just different enough.
Right.
Or they could put on a fake parody show, Dancing with the Cthulhu's.
Instead of Dancing with the Stars.
That sounds like a sort of just bad enough that it's good parodic reference. Heck, you know what? At this point, I say he's done a good enough job. Let's just let him make the next Parodius.
Yeah, but there's just so much that you can kind of uncover from one playthrough to the next. Various references and just little tidbits that kind of keep you coming back.
Yeah, this is one of those games that you could play for 5 minutes or 5 hours and you still have a good time. That's one of the things I love about STGs, well, at least most STGs, is you get a lot for a short playthrough. And as Mark MSX likes to say, shmups value your time.
Oh, I can't disagree with that.
Uh-oh. What do you got?
Of course, then there's the opposite end of the spectrum. Yeah, you can jump in for 5 minutes, or you could spend 100 hours playing a game like this.
Yep.
Yeah.
But it's that good. Like, it is that good that I've gone back to it almost endlessly, really. I'll go back to it even today, and it's been well over a year since its release.
Yeah. It definitely has some staying power that I would not have guessed. So let's talk about the graphics for a bit here. One of the things that I really liked is that it has a lot of personality. It's of course it has a real cartoony style, and it sort of has the heavy dark lines around your characters and scenery, and like the facial features of the characters and things. It sort of gave me a little bit of think of like a modernized version of a Hanna-Barbera sort of thing, or like some of the more current cartoons that have more simplified art styles and things.
Like an Adult Swim? Or...
Yeah, that kind of a thing. And I love the personality that's injected into them. Like at the character select screen, when you select Garrett, he just sort of slumps over and has this dejected look on his face like, oh no, I gotta do this again?
Oh, it goes even further than that too, because sometimes, every now and again, the background music drops out, And his ship, you can hear this like rattly cough as he sort of like blasts off. It is the funniest thing if you can catch it. It's so funny.
Oh.
It's great.
That is funny.
Just this whole and off he goes.
Or Gwen has this, sort of slight smile when you look at her on the character select screen, and then when you select her, she sort of stands up straight and gets this almost intimidating look about her, like, yeah, I'm ready for this. Or
a touch on the psychotic side. It's fantastic.
Yeah. Or Jojo, you select him, and suddenly you see his electrified nipples, I guess you could say, underneath of his shirt, and he sticks his arms up in this victorious pose, and it's pretty funny.
Yeah, it definitely catches you off guard. Yeah, the electric nips.
Yeah, or the aforementioned Swag Thulu with the dab, or Sophie Jefferson does this thing where she runs onto the screen, and then runs onto the display, and then she'll run into the screen as if she's going to break the fourth wall, and then you see the glass shatter kind of effect happening, and stuff like that. Or during gameplay, when you get certain hazards or whatever, their facial expressions will change, because there'll be a little avatar of them in the top left corner, and so you'll see Garrett with this horrified look on his face from time to time, where you'll encounter different things. Or Sophie, when you get down to no life left, she'll get angry and she'll flip you off or flip off the screen.
Yeah. I think pound for pound, though, I think Gwen's expressions are the best in the corner. There are these parts where she's just so completely done with your garbage, and she just scowls in a way that it's like nothing else.
One of the things that really hit home for me on how well this was animated and how well this was done to give the characters personality was, I don't know what game you were playing last Saturday, Ed, but it seemed like every time the ship got hit, that lady rocked back and forth in her seat several times over, and it almost looked like it was an X-rated game. I don't the way she was moving.
Right,
Galaxy
we're talking
Storm.
about that's the one that finally came out in the US eShop now. Don't buy it.
Yeah, it was based on an H game.
Yeah.
And let's just say the original PC version,
it runs better, but oh boy.
Yeah, it's rough.
Yeah, it really goes a long way to give the game a sense of character, and I think that the graphics do. I mean, this has probably been used a lot of times, but they do a lot with a little.
Right.
And I didn't find myself at any such time going, the screen, bring back Ghostblade with its singing mosquitoes here, where the characters with a wheeze, where the bullets matched the backgrounds, and it got confusing. That never ever happened in this game. I always knew what was coming and what was going, and
yep.
It says a lot to good game design and graphic design for that.
Except for Space Texas, I still get tripped up by those bullets.
Yeah. The one thing about Space Texas that I found is that the hint that they give you at the beginning of the stage is that the enemies have potato aim. And so it's like in the space bowling stage where the enemies come on screen, and if you literally just sit there still, they'll shoot the two groups of bullets or whatever, but they'll fly past you. They'll shoot at your position, but the bullets will fly past you. But there are times when you still have to move in Space Texas, because either you'll be in the path of one of the trains or other enemies coming on screen. So there's still...
Yeah, the stars are an issue. They're a big issue.
The stars, and then also in Space Texas, you've got the rock formations that will be in your way sometimes. So yeah. But visually speaking, I think you're right, Addicted. I think the game does a good job of, generally speaking, communicating what is a foreground hazard, what's background, what the bullets are, or the enemy projectiles and things like that, so that you can clearly identify elements, because it definitely has a very retro look and feel to it.
Well, this ain't no R-Type Final 2.
True. I mean, the space bowling stage has a retrowave theme to it.
Yeah, it's very easy to read what is actually can hurt you and what can't on there. Unlike, as I mentioned within R-Type Final 2, it's not so much the full game, it's that darn space battleship homage part. I think it's like the third or fourth stage where stuff just sort of comes flying into view, and it's really hard to tell when you're gonna be able to hit that type of stuff. So this game, to its success, does not have any of those moments, or at least didn't for me.
Right. So what about the sound?
Well, hold on. So, what I think would be fun to do on here is the graphics had all sorts of little meters at the screen. Some were funny, like Give Me the Toilet Monster Boss. And I just thought back to Raiden 5, where we just sort of like a cheer meter that most people didn't use. It would be neat to just put a meter on the side of it and have people wonder what the heck it does.
That seems like the kind of thing that would work well within the context of this game.
It's a pinata meter. What's it do? It just increases your fun factor.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Although there is a couple gauges on here that I don't know what they do. There's a couple right underneath the bombs, for example. They don't change. I don't know. That could be firepower. I have no idea. But like I'm hitting stuff right now. I'm getting hit. Nothing's being reduced. So I mean, I think there's a bit of credence to that. I think you might be onto something.
All right, so you have to go. This game has very well done graphics, and I have to say I really enjoyed the fun chiptune style soundtrack of this game. And I didn't find myself ever thinking to myself, "This is something that I just want to turn off and play some Led Zeppelin, or wanted to play some Megadeth, or I didn't want to turn off and listen to something else." I thoroughly enjoyed the soundtrack, and I didn't have the Steel Vampire effect, where everything sounds like it's going to explode your speakers, or the explosions are too overdrawn, too loud. The voice samples were nice, and I have to award this game. This is the 2021 Shoot the Corecast Award for Best Use of a Speak and Spell in a Game.
Yeah. The voice samples in the game are interesting because you get the sort of speak and spell effect with the character select, where you get Garrett Zippola, Gwen Rossi, and the way it kind of says the voice or the character names in very robotic fashion. But then you also get
Swag Tool You.
Yeah, Swag Full Hue, But then in the game, you also get these really odd, computery, high-pitched kind of sounds. Like when you take out a full enemy wave and it says "Bravo" or "Brava" with Sophie Jefferson for some reason. Maybe she's Russian or something.
Oh, Bravo and Brava are used for male and female actresses.
Okay.
If you're saying bravo to a female performer, you would say brava. It's a nice attention to detail.
Oh, interesting. Okay, I wasn't sure about that. But you'll get it'll say bravo. There's like you said, this weird high pitched voice, or you get to the end of the stage and when it gives you your rating, it's this really muffled, perfect or great,
like a bit crushed, sort of down-sampled voice clip, which you'd hear that kind of a thing on like an NES or a Game Boy game.
Yeah. So it very much is sort of a callback to the low-quality voice samples that you would hear in older games before we really had storage to be able to have something that was, sort of a Sega CD, PlayStation, Saturn kind of quality of full recorded voice.
Quick tangent, actually. Allegedly, the Sega logo when you're firing up Sonic the Hedgehog 2 on the Game Gear?
Mm-hmm.
Allegedly, that voice clip takes up half the memory on that cartridge.
I think I've heard that.
That sounds about right, because it sounds like the same thing that happened to Ghostbusters on the NES. They forgot they couldn't have enough room to finish the game.
Yeah, but I mean, kind of calling back to the days of things like console ports or even the arcade version of Gauntlet, for example, where you get the really low quality, Red Warrior has shot the food, or Red Warrior needs food badly. The really low quality, scratchy voice samples. And so it's kind of a fun callback to that, but some of the voices are harder to understand because there's so much heavy effects on them. Yeah. But it is, I guess, charming in that way.
Yeah, maybe we can come up with a special collector's edition that comes with a tape recorder that you plug in via USB, and just like the arcade game Journey, it starts playing a song. That may be a bit too over the top.
That might be a bit too over the top, but it would be a fun collector edition kind of, useless trinket.
Hey, I'd take one of those. You've seen those people who have come out with like miniature editions of those toys? Like a small version of older toys, like 80s toys. Mm-hmm. I am pretty certain there's a small speak and spell. If that was inside the collector's edition for this game, I'd take it.
Nice. The other thing I appreciated was when you beat a lot of the bosses, it's sort of a very understated sound effect that plays. Instead of a big explosion or something like that, you sort of get this little bloop sound, and it's kind of a fun subversion of the usual trope of beat the boss and get a big satisfying explosion or whatever. That was something I noticed right away, and I thought that was kind of a funny little turn on, turn it on its head kind of a thing, of a standard genre convention. I wanted to ask, because I know when you reviewed the game, I'm pretty sure you went into scoring at some level. And I know there's a multiplier at work somehow, but I honestly did not figure out how the scoring works in this game.
The scoring itself is actually very basic. The multiplier, it basically just builds up as you take out large chains of enemies. And when your multiplier gets to a certain point, I think it's like 4 times or something like that. Maybe 8 times. 4 times, I think, is what the maximum is. Uh-huh. As long as you're taking enemies out, this flashing gauge will build up and you'll maintain your multiplier. However, if you are in overdrive, you'll get an 8 times multiplier. And I believe your multiplier will go to higher levels if you play in hardcore as well. So if you want the best scores, you've got to play on a harder difficulty, because that's where you'll get the most consistent high multipliers. To that end, too, you'll get 8 times the multiplier normally, but I believe it'll jump to 16 on an overdrive.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's one thing I noticed when I was playing through. My initial score for the first loop was something on the order of 300,000 points, and then on my loop 2 playthrough, I got something like 4.5 million, and then I got 6 million in loop 3, and then my final loop 4 score was, or not million, it was like 600,000 or whatever, and then 700 and some thousand points for my last run through the game. So, yeah, you definitely you definitely score more the higher the difficulty level. I did notice that. But that would make more sense then if you go into hardcore then and have that opportunity, to keep your multiplier up. And I guess the thing that is a bit of a downside is because there are enough randomized elements where you might get multiple mad events in a row on a higher difficulty level or a higher loop that have no enemies or obstacles to destroy, or you may get several segments stitched together in a stage where there's no opportunity to take out enemies, it's all just obstacles or things to dodge. There are times when you're going to go quite a stretch without a single enemy to shoot. So the multiplier aspect it's not like a cave game that you can chain through a stage or things like that where you can really maximize those opportunities. Obviously, the scoring in the game, you can only affect the multiplier and maximize its effectiveness to a certain extent based on what the game throws at you. So it's still a bit of a dice roll in that sense.
It is, yeah. I just checked my score. I think my best score is 1.4 million.
Wow.
And I'm currently rocking a 44 on the leaderboard for Steam.
That's pretty good. But yeah, scoring was something that I really just didn't pay that much attention to because again, the somewhat random nature of how a run's going to unfold makes it harder to count on getting a good high score. But then B, I just never really figured out how that worked, other than, like you said, just taking enemies in quick enough succession to build and maintain a multiplier. In terms of overall impressions for this game, I kind of alluded at the beginning of the episode to the fact that, as we talked about the question of the month, that my tendency toward less random elements in games has kind of always been a thing. This game has kind of opened my eyes to the possibilities of something beyond that. And I've had other experiences with rogue-lite type of games. There's I can't remember what it's called, Project Xenon Valkyrie or something like that, I think it was an indie game, the indie platformer that came out a couple of years back, and I got a review code of it and wrote up a review for RF Generation. And it was a fun little game and a good design and all of that, but the difficulty of getting so far in a run and then dying and having no recourse because the power-ups that you had the opportunity to buy during the course of the game or what have you, sometimes you would have really good luck, and then other times the game would give you no help at all, and so you really had to build a level of skill within the game to sort of understand the basic structure of each level and what the enemies and things were that it was going to throw at you in order to really succeed. I feel like with this genre, because of the quick pick-up-and-play nature of shooting games from a historical perspective, it's easy to sort of jump into a run and get some enjoyment out of it and sort of have a little bit of fun with the more random nature of how it's going to present the game to you, and that be something that can kind of keep the experience fresh. But there's also a degree of trying to think of how to word this. When I was playing, there were a couple of times when I was kind of on the edge of my seat, so to speak, because a run was going relatively well, but I'd made a couple of mistakes, and so I felt like this could be it. At any moment, I could botch the rest of this run, and it'll be all over. And so there were a couple of times when a particular run, I would get to a boss and then kind of get through that boss fight by the skin of my teeth. And it was very exhilarating. And it sort of took me back to that kind of feeling that I got playing these types of games as a kid and not really understanding the idea of sort of memorizing the level layouts and memorizing the boss patterns of things, but just sort of having fun, playing the game, reacting to what's on screen, and taking it all in. You know, the audio-visual experience, and processing it in the moment, and deriving enjoyment out of that. And I feel like this game kind of takes that to the next level in a way, because, yeah, there are certain elements that are generally going to be there, but the way that it's presented to you, and the order that you get things in, and how everything unfolds is going to be a little bit different every time. And so it sort of gives you that feeling that, like I said, like as when I was a kid, that I can just sort of play the game, react to it in real time, and just sort of enjoy myself in the moment, and not worry as much about grinding it out like I would with a more structured or a more rigidly structured game, I guess I'll say. So that was something that I found to be pretty satisfying as I was playing the game, and also a bit refreshing as compared to a slightly more rote experience. What are your thoughts, Addicted?
Well, I think that there is, as I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of room for this type of games to grow, and I think that as we see Q-em-ups became their own form of STG, I think that Rogue-lite STGs will probably continue to grow, and we'll see more of this. It's not something that's so much of a community-driven experience, such as you mentioned with your caves, or even with an upcoming play of Area 88 or UN Squadron, that people could go, yeah, I think I can do this too. It in some ways lacks the communal aspect, but what it lacks in the communal aspect, it makes up for in the individual aspect. Your runs are unique to you and the challenge that you face. It allows you to sort of craft your own story in a way. Hey, remember that run where I got this bad one for Gwen and I was almost dead, and then I got there. It creates that talkability. It reminds me a lot of playing games with friends being younger, and hey, did you see that, and stuff like that you don't normally get within games. So there's definitely room for both, and it's quite surprised me on how much I'm liking the roguelite elements. I'm trying a roguelite game right now called Dreamscape or Dreamscaper that is about facing your inner demons, and so far it's pretty fun. I mean, it's not I'm not going to call it the best thing since sliced bread or anything. Well, maybe that will date me, or the best game ever. But at the same time, it's still an interesting take in a genre where it seems that we sort of hit what we can do with the classic style or the classic mechanics. It offers it a way to grow and offers it a way to gain an audience that we may not have otherwise. I mean, everyone was talking about R-Type Final 2 for a while, and that sort of just dropped off. I know that they're adding more to it, and I applaud them for everything that they did, but it was more of a flash in the pan than setting the world on fire that I think STGs really need to grow, right? in order for them to be viable and for us to enjoy this, we've got to have some form of bringing new people in. And I think, I'm not pulling a Mandalorian reference here, but I think this is the way.
This is the way.
Yeah, I mean, I know you've said quite a bit about the game over time, Ed, in terms of your review and talking about it on streams and stuff. But do you have anything else to add, or any other thoughts that?
I think the roguelite subgenre. I think you're probably right, Addicted. There's probably going to be some kind of a branch with these sorts of games, because you've got your classics such as Area 88, Gradius, and so forth, right? Like a traditional shoot 'em up. Then you've got your Danmaku like Mushihime-sama, Ketsui, etc., like the bullet hell style. But then there's the roguelite style, and I think it has enough of a difference that it could establish itself as a more permanent subgenre, and one that could gain more of a following as compared to, say, Danmaku or a classic shoot 'em up. And I think there's plenty of room for communities and groups to grow in this subgenre space as well. For me personally, I like the infinite replay value of it, because it's always a little different every time you go in. Are you going to have a good day? Are you going to have a bad day? It's to me, I find that very fun, not knowing exactly what's going to come next. As long as it's done in such a way that it's not going to completely wreck your day or be too oppressive or what have you. When it's done properly, as Project Starship X and games like Steriden does it, I mean, I'm all for these types of games. So I'm looking forward to more of them making their way out. And I think so far, anyways, Project Starship X is probably the gold standard for these kinds of games. And I mean, there's new ones that are coming out all the time. You've got stuff like Black Future 88, which is more of a run and gun. You've got more of a 3D perspective on things with a game like Curve Space. And even Steriden has its own, almost like a clone game called Black Paradox. So yeah, there's plenty of room for this subgenre to grow, and I think I think it's here to stay. I think more people are sort of more developers are sort of embracing the roguelite aspect, if not to boost the replayability of the game, but also to sort of enhance and do things a little different from ones that are already there. So yeah, I 100% enjoy this type of game for sure. And Project Starship X, again, in my opinion, is the best of them so far.
Yeah, I haven't played a lot, but I would have to say I agree. I think it's well designed enough and well considered enough in terms of you can see the care that's been put into getting the elements right and with a pretty good balance, that I think all of that combined with, the wacky sense of humor and the good character and the personality that's in the game, I think all of that combined really elevates this above what you might see from another game that sort of takes this roguelite approach. And I think it makes it much more of a complete package. Alright, so now that we have shared our thoughts, let's go into some thoughts from the RFGen community. And we got a lot of feedback, particularly from Gollum, who was in my streams and was playing along with us during the course of the month. Gollum really shared a lot of good information, took a lot of notes, and put some stuff in the thread. So Gollum says, I had some time to spare, so I fired up this one. Initial thoughts after 2 hours. And he gave a spoiler, Gollum gave a spoiler warning in the thread. Fun game, good music. Is the Sun Song a Gradius homage? I think that's what you were alluding to, Addicted.
Yep.
The dash gives you a huge amount of invincibility time, and it refreshes really quickly. Kind of reminds me of Vanishing Earth in that sense. And I wonder if that's a reference to Star Soldier Vanishing Earth on the N64. I don't remember a lot of invincibility unless you get a lot of iframes after picking up power-ups, maybe?
There's actually a shield.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, it's not even... I don't think it's even mentioned... It might be mentioned in the manual, but, it's hard to find a manual for Star Soldier.
True.
I've got the Japanese one, and I think it's mentioned in there, but yeah... that was something that I actually missed in my original review. I actually had to do an update on that.
It's been forever since I fired that up, so I'd forgotten about that. Let's see. The ship is invincible during the dash move, as you would expect. However, you are also invincible for a fraction of a second after the dash ends, since you can only dash upward, learning that after dash invincibility is important when you need to fly through lasers that move up the screen under your ship. He says, I like the tank. Normally your dash only points upwards. When you dash in the tank, though, you dash backwards to eject out of the tank. You can then rejoin it by dashing upwards. This creates moments with a fun up-down rhythm. I also like the crawler. There's a jump move that's like Aerostar, but better. You can even jump on enemies. Seems like the variation could be small enough that it's memorizable, despite some randomness in the level layouts. Having tried the first 5 characters, the easiest one for me so far is John. Then for visual notes, the lightning power-up is overload mode. This is important to remember because the screen will flash with a giant background image. The last thing you want to do is pick up this power-up when you are trying to dodge bullets. You'll obscure the bullets with a giant shaking splash image. The screen will also flash when you strike a dash target and when you take a hit. Flashing after you take a hit isn't so bad, since you have some invincibility afterwards. It's the flash after hitting a dash target that is important to anticipate, since you won't have any invincibility period to reorient yourself. The flashing HUD panels cannot be changed. You also can't put up paper or something to hide them, since they show your health and bombs. There's plenty of other flashing stuff, such as the ship-to-crawler transformation or boss phase transitions, but those are segregated from any danger. And then later in that thread, Gollum says, it's neat how clearing the end level unlocks more content to play through. I spent like a week trying to loop the game by going through stages 6 to 10, and I didn't realize that everyone else was trying to loop the game by clearing the end boss on stage 5 in a second playthrough. 2 senses for the same word. After clearing the TLB, you get a bunch of modes that give you higher scoring possibilities, so it seems worthwhile to focus on clearing the game before scoring. And Gollum did post at least one full run, I think more than one full run in the thread that's on YouTube. The YouTube channel is Super Gollemio, I think it is. So go check that out. I think ultimately the challenge was memorizing the level blocks and mad events. Once nothing surprised me, it was all pretty doable. Also helps that your health maxes out at 10, which is ridiculously generous for this genre. Here's the list of stuff I wish I knew off the bat. What all the power-ups do. If you don't charge the final boss portal, the game continues. If you clear the final boss multiple times, you unlock more content. If you collect shield restores with a full shield, it powers up the little bar under your shield counter. That bar has 5 notches, and you mentioned this before, Ed. Once you fill up the bar, you get an extra max shield. So it's beneficial to pick up shield restores even if you have a max shield. Aside from, the 200 points. Your post-dash invincibility allows you to move about as far as you move up. Not all crash attackable enemies will be locked on, such as the hands in the moon stage. You're invincible when transitioning into or out of the crawler. Mad events undraw the screen all at once and immediately replace it with a new challenge. Normal challenges scrolling gradually from the top of the screen. We mentioned this earlier. You can hold up to fight gravity. By dashing, you can go up against the gravity, and then by holding up, you will slow your descent. This allows you to step up even when you are in the gravity down. Null Health and Burning Will both give you overload power. That was one thing we did not touch on.
Oh, right, Burning Will. That will boost up your score as well.
Yeah, Burning Will, he says, is when you don't get hit for an extended period of time. Getting hit in the tank does not cancel Burning Will. Unfortunately, I was not good enough to get that very frequently, but I did experience that a couple of times. Let's see, if you clear a level without getting hit, you get a tank power-up. If you already have the tank, you'll get nothing. Please only watch the bottom 3 rows of tiles during the Stage 2 Sun boss. Stay toward the right so that stray bullets will get pulled into the sun and miss you, but be aware the hazards can still come from the bottom right. Along with that, during the Stage 2 Sun, if you hug the right side of the screen, no bullets from eyeballs can reach you. Background dims when you focus shot. Lag on being able to dash again is not the same as lag on being able to re-enter the tank. I think you need to wait for the dash clock, which is the sort of animation that spins around, to reach 12 before you can go back into the tank. We mentioned the shops on stages 2 and 4. Space Texas has a discounted shop, which we did not mention. Normal bombs only affect bullets. Green Mushroom mini-boss drops a 1-up. If Mad Event is written in blue, your controls are reversed. So that's what you mentioned earlier, Addicted, where your ship turns blue, and sort of the whole screen, as you said, Ed, kind of has a negative effect to it, like a photo negative.
Yep.
Mad events are not tied to a specific stage. The Stage 4 Asteroid Belt boss, the big Trimorph, waves its arms. You can't touch its hands, but you can touch its arms. That was another thing that we did not mention, is that with several of the bosses, you can actually overlap the bosses with your ship sprite and not take damage, like the Zombie Hitler and stuff like that. The lightning is an overload power-up. He already mentioned that before. Let's see. Holding the shot button slows the ship without changing the shot. Unless you're in the tank when you have a standard spread/focus dichotomy. Each stage pulls from a bank of available stages based on the stage number. Stage 1 has a set of stages to pull from, Stage 2 has its own set, and so on and so forth. That is, you can never have the cavern stage as Stage 1, and you can never have the space junk field as Stage 2. Stage 5 rotates as you clear each one. So far, I think these are the easiest stages to score in. So Stage 1 is the Earth, of course, Stage 2 the Meteor Field, Stage 3 the Cavern, and Stage 4 the Computer. And then final thoughts. Playing well means grinding the mad events into long-term memory. This really cuts at the core of the genre itself. A scrolling screen will express challenges gradually by movement of space. Something flies into view, and the player has a certain time frame to react. A core feature of STGs is the fact that things take time to happen because they have space to fly through, and that time is when the player forms a response. The fact that mad events flash on screen instantly means that your reaction needs to be entirely pre-baked. I needed to remember right away which mad event I had and position myself accordingly. There are a few other ways that the game worked against learning. A large amount of variety came in the different flight paths that eyeballs would take through the screen. I'm pretty sure they only go one way, but unless you have memorized each shape of warning signs, you won't know where the eyeballs will appear until you see the eyeballs enter the screen. The large amount of variation also means that a good portion of the game's complexity is wrapped up in different courses that the eyeballs can take. Contrast that to Star Soldier, where different flight paths are reflected in different enemy sprites, and there are fewer types. The warning signs in general were something I needed to adapt to. It's easy to understand how something moves through space by watching it move through space. Like, there's a pedagogical value to just seeing an enemy move. The warning signs run counter to that, where the game signals the space that something will occupy, but not the timing associated with that space. It's an interesting method of communication that I haven't fully wrapped my brain around. The dash move itself is very gracious. Internalizing the timing on this gives the player a large amount of leeway. Mad events and eyeball lines are all very particular, minute instances of memorization, but if you can hone the timing on the dash, that's a broad sort of memorization that applies across the game. In the end, the character I preferred the most was Garrett, since I think his default shot handles the largest number of challenges. You don't need to point-blank anything like with Shop Thulu or Gwen. You won't have any gaps like with John. So a lot of really good thoughts from Gollum there, and some sort of good meta-analysis on how this game sort of fits into the genre as a whole and how it stands out. So thank you for those thoughts.
And he's not the first person who suggested Garrett. I've seen some other people online suggest Garrett just because the amount of shots he can put out.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I may have to try a couple more runs with him.
Yeah, I kind of gravitated toward Garrett in the late game.
Alright, our next thoughts come to us from @Christap76. Well, what more can I say about this game apart from the fact it tries to do things different and original? I wish the game would let you dash backwards, as in able to push back and dash at the same time. I know it's possible to dash backwards, but the way they pull it off in this game just feels awkward to me and hinders the gameplay. I think I prefer my shmups to be a bit more conventional. I think the game tries too hard to be different, and this impacts my enjoyment. I'll keep playing, and hopefully this game will grow on me. Well, hopefully you do keep playing. I think that this game, well, not for everybody, has a certain amount of charm, and even if you don't get very far, you seem, at least in my opinion, seems to be pretty satisfied for the amount of time that you put in. You feel like you made at least some accomplishment or gotten a little farther or figured out the mad event.
Right. And that was an interesting point about the dash. I kind of felt that way early on, because before I started playing it, of course, I had already seen you, Ed, to stream it several times, but I do feel like the dash could be expanded upon. So if Arabong was going to go further with this concept, that's something that I think could work well, is to find a way to expand on the dash maneuver to make it more directional or give you a little bit more control over it, so it's not just a case of let's learn when to dash so I can then dash and then pull back or what have you. You know, it might be interesting to expand upon that idea a little bit.
Call it like Omni Dash or something.
Yeah, something like that. Corkman chimed in and said, "This game wasn't really on my radar to buy and really play, but since the Shmup Club was in, so was I. Surprisingly, I really did like this game. I eventually got a hang of the dash mechanic and the randomness of the levels and mad events. Those things made the gameplay unique and memorable. The graphics were decent, and the music was really good as well. Thanks to the Shmup Club for this recommendation."
So, Mini Console Man says, "I bought this game a while back when I saw the glowing review from Studio Mudprints." I know those guys. I initially played it several times, but wasn't really feeling it. Fast forward to this month, and I want to keep going back and seeing what new enemies I will encounter and what pickups I'll get to destroy them. Glad I finally gave this game the time it deserved. Thank you to everyone for the helpful tips, as there was so much to figure out with this game, which was half the fun. High score of 753,981. Got this score about halfway through the month, and although I feel like I've gotten better at the game, I couldn't manage to come close to this. I want to say also that I think when I played the first game, it really wasn't clicking with me, the original Project Starship. But as I made my way through more and more loops, that's when things started to sort of open up. And when I started seeing the footage and the screenshots of Project Starship X, I knew then that it was going to be a much better sort of realization of the concept. And so I went into it knowing that it was going to be at least a better game than what I was playing. And I was kind of enjoying what was there, even though, looking back, it wasn't nearly as good. But yeah, I think a lot, like, we've come under fire from a lot of people saying that our review was too glowing. We were giving it too much praise. And I think Mini Console Man here sort of exemplifies that perhaps maybe they didn't look close enough at what they were playing. So I get, obviously it's not going to appeal to everyone, but don't play it for only, a half an hour or what have you, because you're not going to get nearly the full experience.
Very true.
All right, our last comment comes to us from Full Macho. My apologies, I got some time into this game, but didn't get too far before posting here. I appreciate the unique qualities about this game, but I found certain parts to be extremely frustrating. The game makers made the choice to have a style of being obtuse, and it works fine with incentivizing the player to pay attention and really learn about the game, but the settings and scoring explanation are unnecessarily limited. I never fully built muscle memory to hitting dash when I need to, and I really wish I could have mapped it to a different button in the settings. As I typed this, I realized I think on the system level on the Switch I could remap buttons, but I totally forgot about that new feature. Either in the comments or in the stream I saw others like Tank, but I found it boring and tedious. Anytime I had the tank, I was just ejecting to get around those enemies coming from the bottom and never really got to unleash its full firepower. For the scoring, seeing how others are also confused, I guess I can take a guess. It's that the high score and number at the top of the title screen is the sum of your loops. My total score was right around 400,000. My score now is 762,940. I've gotten as far as loop 3 stage 5, a full gravity stage is brutal. So it seems to me that the high score is the sum of the loops you finished, with my first loop at 400k and my second probably being around 360k. Yeah, it's interesting on the Full Macho's take versus the take that from Mini Console Man on how different people put it. I know it's definitely different for different people, but I think to Ed's point, it's also a game that you can't see and fully grasp within just a couple playthroughs. I hope that he continues playing. I hope that he finds some enjoyment about it. But if you find out the game's ultimately not for you, it's best to move on to something else. And that's why we have the Shmup Club. If you don't like a game, there's always next month.
Yep. Well, thank you so much to all the participants for spending time with the game and for sharing your thoughts on the forum. We got a lot of good feedback and more participants this month than I expected, so I was very happy to see that. Looking quickly at the high scores, Gollum came in at the top, similar to what you mentioned, Ed, at 1,418,405 points. Fomacho had the aforementioned 762,940 points, and then Mini Console Man had 753,981 points. So, final thoughts. I really like this game. I was kind of surprised. I liked the look of it and what I'd heard from the sound and everything from watching you stream it, Ed, but honestly, I wasn't sure I was going to actually enjoy playing it. But the more the month went on, I think it started to click with me. Early on, I struggled because of the things like the mad events and the sort of differing stage layouts and so forth, that I would get thrown for a loop pretty easily, or being expected to sort of react to certain things very quickly. But like what Gollum said, once you sort of learn to memorize those little short segments, regardless of where they are in the stage, you can kind of start to then chain those little segments together in your mind as you're playing the game, and making quick little corrections, or oh, I got to do this one next, or oh, now it's this bit. So you kind of start to pull from that cache of I know how the 20 different potential spots within this stage are going to happen. I might only get 10 or I'm only going to get 8 or 10 or whatever this time around. But I already know what those things are because I've seen them all now several times, and so I can kind of quickly extrapolate on the fly as to what it is I'm going to do. And so it's really an interesting exercise of combining memorization with quick reaction and fast problem solving to sort of create a unique loop of how to interact with the game. And I found myself enjoying this a whole lot more than I thought that I would. And I came away feeling pretty enriched by the experience.
Yeah, I would have to echo those sentiments. I think that the game, it was something that I had just meddled with a little bit, but it certainly, I guess you sort of have to untrain yourself in order to deal with. As we mentioned earlier, that this seems to be the start of a new subgenre, and it will be interesting to see where this grows and how it grows in some of the games that come out of it, because there's certainly a lot of creativity that can go into something like this versus your tried and true methods of the traditional shmup or your Danmakus, where most of the stuff that people can think of has already been done. It's something that for me was, I was playing like, yeah, this is fun, but I don't see myself playing this too much outside of the month to, hey, just one more run. And I think that speaks volumes on its replayability. Well, if I'm looking to effectively master a game or something like that, I'm going to stick with your Danmakus, your caves, or stick with your R-types and show that, hey, this can be done. There's still validity in following that method and liking those games. But this subgenre, to me, and seeing what comes next, is the most exciting thing I've seen come out or come into shmups in quite a long while.
Now, I guess my final thought, I gave this game the 2020. Wait, was it 2020?
Yeah,
I think it was 20. It was the 2020 shoot 'em up of the year, and there's probably a really good reason for that. I mean, I don't think there's been another game that has hijacked our streams quite like Project Starship X has on numerous occasions. We'll start off a stream, we'll do a thing or two, but then we fire up Project Starship X and it's 2 more hours.
Yeah.
Every single time. Because it's just so replayable, especially if you're using a character like Sophie. I like that added that added sort of roll of the dice to see if I can, get a decent roll out of her. It's so good. I might make a push to get those final 5 achievements that I'm missing.
Oh.
But yeah, I don't know. I think this game still has quite a bit more staying power, despite having spent over 100 hours in it myself, across the 3 different versions. It's just super, super good, and yeah, I'll stand by the game of the year, or the shmup of the year for 2020. It was unlike anything else that came out that year, and it was probably the best thing about 2020, if I'm 100% honest.
Yeah.
You know what would be nice to see somebody do is, since we got all this ROM hacks and we got ways of doing stuff, I know we have black labels and white labels, but give me a Ketsui randomizer or something like that. Let's add a little bit more of those elements into traditional shmups, or traditional Danmaku in this case.
plot twist. They add ships from different games, and sometimes you have to use like horizontal fire in a Tate situation.
Jeez.
Oh, that's cruel.
Use the Sakura from, I think it's the Sakura from like Akai Katana.
Oh, that would be cruel.
Or like whatever the setup is for like Guange. But like throw that into like a Pro Gear situation.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I could at least say I'm thankful that they didn't invert the screen or something like that for in here, or flip the screen.
Oh, that would be rough.
Now that's...
But you know what? Now that you've said it, you wait. That'll be implemented in a patch.
Yeah, or in the sequel. That would be a mad event that I might I might end up rage quitting over.
That would change it from a mad event to a you mad bro event.
Oh, well played. Alrighty, well, what do we got coming up next?
Deep space waifus.
Oh, no.
I don't know about that.
Not on this podcast. What we do have, however, is we are halfway through August already, and we have been playing Galaga 88, along with Galaga 90, and at some point Galaga 91, since that's kind of all the same game. That is, of course, from Namco, arcade classic, and it is on multiple platforms. Most of us, I think, have been playing the PC Engine and TurboGrafx version, though, because of the accessibility with the TurboGrafx and PC Engine Mini, since it's on there.
Oh, yeah.
So that's how most of us, I think, have been playing the game. And then for next month, September 2021, we've got Assault Shell, which is a relatively new indie shmup. So that'll be interesting to take a look at, because it's kind of a stark art style that, I don't know, it'll be a little bit of a different experience, I think, but very influenced by, or at least it appears influenced by, stuff like Crimson Clover and things like that. So it'll be kind of interesting to see some of those elements in, a relatively new indie game. So, as always, we want to make sure and shout out Ed for the awesome logo that you did for the podcast. And of course the shirts that we have. Check those out at Redbubble. To Kogasu for the intro and outro music. Thank you to our fellow RF Generation podcasts, the RF Generation Playcast and the Collector Cast. Check those out. And of course, as I mentioned at the top of the show, I do stream the games every month, so please come and check me out on Twitch and watch me fail over and over again, and occasionally have a win.
And make sure to toss a coin to your Twitcher.
Oh, I like that. Toss a coin to your Twitcher. Very nice.
Donations of plenty. Anything
that you want to plug, Ed, that you've got coming up?
Well, obviously we've got the run this weekend for Shmup Slam 4. I've been sort of neglecting all of my other content in favor of beefing up my strategy and practice on that. I'm looking forward to playing some Galaga 88 afterwards, though. Still got to grab that 1cc for this particular month.
Oh, yeah.
New episodes of Bullet Heaven are in the works. We've got Space Invaders Invincible Collection Collector's Edition, as well as Griffin Knight Epic from Strictly Limited. We also have, right now I'm in the middle of doing a review for Ketsui Kizuneji Gokutachi DX on the Switch, which is a Switch port of a mobile game which was ported from arcade, so a port of a port of a port. it's fascinating to play these games on a modern system because so easily they could just be lost to time. I'm glad that they've been preserved in this sort of a manner, and I hope to see others like, I don't know, Pro Gear or Mushihime-sama Futari. They could happen because they both exist. And of course, I stream every Wednesday and every Saturday on my YouTube channel, which is just youtube.com/Studio Mudprints. And it's the Bullet Heaven channel. So if you like your shmups, come on over and check it out. Oh, by the way, if any of you follow our channel, Deruna is looking to set up a secondary channel for her to cover the kind of games that she enjoys. It's going to be called Mudprints 2, as in TOO, as in as well. It's clever. And basically, she'll be doing stuff like RPGs, Final Fantasy, and we're priming some stuff with a number of the Shantae games. So that'll be kind of fun.
Nice. That all sounds really good. Alrighty, any other shout-outs or anything else that we need to touch on before we close up shop?
Oh, yes. Buy my music. mudprintsmusic.bandcamp.com.
Oh, yes. Oh, and everybody, even after the Shmup Slam 4 run is done, go to the Bullet Heaven, or the Studio Mudprints YouTube channel, and watch the walkthrough, the guide for Area 88, because it's a really good video, and it needs more views.
Play like a pro.
Yes.
In 30 minutes or less.
Speaking of music, I really like the music you put so far into Shield Maiden. Does a really good job for that, and I'm looking forward to seeing more of what that game has to offer.
Thank y'all. I like how the Stage 2 theme turned out. I think that's one of my finer works.
Stage 2 is my jam. Yeah. I need to fire that up again because it's been a minute since I fired up the previous beta, and now the new beta version has had a couple of minor updates since it released, and so I'd like to get on and stream the beta versions when they get updated, but I just haven't had any time. So that's another reason to come check me out on Twitch so you can see the ongoing, unfolding changes in Shield Maid MX from Hitp Studios, and see what that game looks like as it sort of evolves in its development cycle. But they are planning a release yet this year, so hopefully we'll be seeing the final release from them soon.
I'll have to bust out the Pizza Arcade V2.
There you go. Alright, well, with all that said, thank you all for listening, and we will catch you next month.
Alright, thank you.